Good morning. Happy Friday. Let's say happy Friday. We made it to Friday. It's so good to see so many familiar faces. It was so good to see you all at the conference. So thank you for supporting our statewide conference. And some of you came up to me and said that you wanted to be on the planning committee. So if you still do, please email me, because the committee is made up of volunteers around the state. I have one full-time person that's not even in the room right now because she's working, right? So if you want to be on the planning committee, please email me, because we're gonna add some new perspectives to and I've worn out my folks that I've had for years. See, she knows. So welcome to Friday Cafe. I'm Veronica Marion, and I am like one of the co-creators of this fabulous networking opportunity. But before we go any further, I want to bring up someone from Bristol who will give us a little history of where we are and a little background of, see, I don't even have to say his name, he's standing up. Come on up, Mr. Patton. Let's give him a hand, please. I love when folks volunteer to do stuff, right? Here you go, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I love volunteering too. Good morning, everyone. I'm probably the least important person in this room, as I'm just a parent volunteer, someone who has... Since I got out of college, I have regretted not going into education as a profession, but that didn't necessarily mean that I couldn't be a part of education. So this is how I've made that transition through volunteerism. So welcome to Bristol, everyone. I've been doing this with the family Friday Cafe series since about 6 months now. I love it. I'm honored to be back, especially because I actually live on this road. So it took me all of 1 minute to get here. A quick piece of history that I thought was amazing pulling in here. As someone who lives on this road but has never been to this property, for my birthday last year, a former mayor of Bristol gifted me with a book about Bristol. It was written in the late 1800s. It's called The Red Book. It's only available at our Historical Society, and you can't even own one, but I have one. In the second chapter of that book, it describes the story of the first African-American person to ever live in the city of Bristol on record. He was a runaway slave. His name was Jimmy. He was widely known in the community, widely respected, widely protected. And this land that we're on right now is where his cave was. He lived here. We are literally conducting this meeting this morning where the first African-American in the city of Bristol's history had a cave in which he lived in. And as an African-American man who's grown up here, spent all 50 years of his life here, I never knew that. And I've never been to this property myself. So when I pulled in this morning, I had a little bit of chill. So this is a special day for me, and I hope it's a special day for everyone. Welcome to Bristol.
Thank you so much, Ricky, and really appreciate you sharing that with us. So good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Carson, State Department of Education, and so happy to be back with you and be back with Friday Cafe. And as we said, see so many wonderful longtime friends and meet new friends. We always like to ask, who's new to Friday Cafe? It's your first time here? Oh, yay, welcome. This is wonderful. So now your charge is to tell a friend. Because we always ask people, we have an evaluation at the end, and we do always ask people, how did you hear about Friday Cafe? And it turns out really word of mouth seems to be the way most people hear, which is fabulous. We're so glad this is a good experience for you and you're sharing it with others. So for those who are new or haven't been in a while, we like to say again what Friday Cafe is. And our big goals, our big ideas that got this off the ground 12 years ago was we needed a place to connect with our people. And as we know, a lot of us are solos. I'm an office of one, right? A lot of us are. And it's just nice to have a chance to connect. Some of us were at the national conference last week in New Orleans. So that was really amazing to have so many people there, all focused on family engagement. But that's rare. And that's a once-a-year event. So we need something regular for our folks in Connecticut. That's what we do here. And it's also about new ideas and sparking different ways of thinking about things, asking questions, solving problems, finding out who else has had this. And I'm a firm believer, and I like saying this, that the innovation in our field comes from the ground up. You all are doing amazing creative things because you're presented with all kinds of interesting and wonderful families and schools, and you find ways to make things work. And so it's through sharing your work that our field really grows. Also within that, and what Friday Cafe does, is we consider this to be a safe space and a little bit of a laboratory to try things out. And so today is definitely in that category. So my colleague and I, who I'll introduce in just a minute, we were thinking about this idea of student performance and assessment and all the rich and wonderful data we have in schools, and families still scratching their heads and saying, how's my child doing and how can I help? That's the number one question. Research studies internationally, parents are still asking that question. So how can we bring these two things together? So we have some information we're going to share with you. We also want to hear from you and what you hear from parents, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, things you've tried. So we're going to have some really rich conversations at your tables, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, and you'll have a chance to pick the conversation you want to be part of. And then this is jointly owned, and we lead alongside you. And as Dr. V just said, looking for volunteers for planning the conference. We're always interested in your thoughts for planning Friday Cafe. So if you have an idea, or if you have a wonderful space like this in your community that we could go to, please let us know. Many of you are familiar with our state definition of family engagement, and we are required by law to present this at every opportunity we have. And what I wanted to go into, though, so family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership. I mean, a lot of us just hear that in our sleep. To promote children's learning and development, that's the what. It's a partnership for what? Children's learning and development. We talk with families about a lot of things that are not about their child's learning and development. But that's what they want to know. And that's where we see outcomes. If you're evaluating anything you're doing, you need to focus on children's learning and development, or you're not going to get the outcomes you wish you had. Welcome. We're very welcoming here. Thank you. And with our definition, we also have guiding principles, or really standards, and I wanted to just go through these a little bit more than we usually do. Can you all see? I'm standing in the way. We talk about being relational, and we talk about linking to learning. Under the relational, if you look a little closely at the language, build trusting relationships, and we talk about two-way conversations about what? About learning. So it's wrapped in the way we relate, and the way we want to build relationships with families focused on learning. And then linked to learning, of course, sharing information about how children are doing. Families want to know that. They want to know what high-quality learning looks like. But the last bullet over there, asking students, how do they want teachers and their family to support their learning? So as we go through the morning, I want you to keep the student in mind, because there's direct ways to communicate with families about learning, and we're going to talk about a lot of that. That would be the school to the family. There's also indirect ways. That goes through the student. Who's the most frequent communicator with families and schools about how things are going? The student. Right, so the way we empower students, the way students talk about learning, student-led conferences, all of that really helps strengthen that bridge between schools and families. Because students also color our perception of each other, right? If my son comes home and he says, I love social studies, oh my gosh, this actually happened, 7th grade. My teacher likes Nirvana, he was so excited. He had not liked that class at all until he found out she liked Nirvana. I talked to her later that year, and she said, he was kind of like not engaging in my class. I knew he could do more. He was just coasting. And I said, I'm going to find a way in. I'm going to connect with that kid. And she tried a few different things, and that one worked. And then they were like this. So the student had colored my impression of the teacher. First it was, it's kind of a lackluster class. And then it was, oh no, it's the most fabulous class ever. And then when I met her and talked with her, I loved her, right? So all of that happens indirectly. Okay, so be thinking about the student today as we go through this. Then I want to introduce our conversation catalyst for the morning. And we're going to talk about our very topic, student performance. How's my child doing? How can I help? Then we're going to launch you into the table talk, and we'll tell you about how to pick a table and what's going to happen there. So I'm very pleased. My colleague, Renee Savoy, Dr. Renee Savoy, is here with me. We've been talking about this for a while. Oops, did I shut off? Oops. Look at that. Remember, it's our safe space. So I better turn it over quick. Renee, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I'm Renee Savoy. I work at the State Department of Education, specifically in the performance office. I've been there a long time, about 26 years or so. So I've done a lot of different things at the agency, mostly in the world of data and assessment, primarily. My current role is as the state coordinator of the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, also called the Nation's Report Card. I'm going to talk a little bit about NAEP data, so I want to let you know that I am the state coordinator for that. So there's one of me in every state in the country, and DC, Puerto Rico. So this assessment is designed to give us a nationally representative picture of how students are doing in important content areas. But I also support our accountability work that comes out of the performance office. So every school gets a next generation accountability report card. There is a range of indicators on that report card. Obviously, student assessment's a really important piece of it, so achievement is part of that, but we also look at student growth over the course of a year. We look at chronic absenteeism. We're looking at arts access, access to college and career-ready coursework, how many credits students are earning, college credits are earning before graduation. So there's a range of indicators. And so I support the work around communicating those results to people, helping people understand the calculations. So I mostly interface with, I would say, district leadership, school leadership, and very rarely have the opportunity to really talk with teachers, to talk with family engagement specialists, and other individuals that are probably in the room today. So when Judy said this is kind of like a laboratory setting, I love that. I will kind of pitch my table later, but I intend to hold like kind of a focus group. That's what my table is going to be all about, because I really need to learn from all of you. You have a rich set of experiences, and for me, it's untapped. So that's pretty important. One thing I did want to point out before I sort of roll into talking about student assessment is I was reflecting on everybody that was going to be here today from the agency, and it really shows how engaging families is so important for every corner of our agency. And so we have representation from quite a few offices, which I think is kind of unique. For such a small meeting, to have such a broad representation from the agency is really key. So we have representation from the Office of Student Support Services, Judy, the Office of One. And then you can see everybody listed on here. I don't need to read the names to you. Unfortunately, Cody Fusco wasn't able to be here with us today, but we still have representation by Caroline of the Center for Literacy Research and Reading Success. So that's great. Okay, so I think it's important to know that different tests have different purposes. Assessments are designed with a purpose in mind, and when we try to use that assessment for other purposes for which it's not designed, it doesn't do a very good job. So we hear about testing all the time. There's all kinds of different testing, and we have some listed here. So we have summative, which if you think of like a smarter balanced assessment in grades 3 through 8, or SAT, or NGSS, which is our science assessment, those are all considered summative. So they are end of the year, end of instruction, big picture overall summary. And as we're getting settled, I'm actually gonna grab my glasses too. Since I am looking at the screen, I probably need to be able to read what's on it. Sure.
Are we going to get a PowerPoint or should I get
I asked Judy if she could send the PowerPoint around because I have some embedded links in here too that you might want to reference, and she said she'll do that. So you're going to get it. Okay, so summative, that's kind of the big picture, the one that we're really familiar with. But then we also have a bunch of other tests that are administered in schools all the time. A few of them are state required, but mostly the summative is required, and then we've got some screeners that we're going to talk about. Those are required, but all of the other testing that happens day to day is information that usually the teachers need to be able to drive their instruction. So there's interim or benchmark assessments. Those are smaller grain size than a summative assessment. Universal screeners, which I just mentioned, obviously in the name universal, it's given to everybody. And we're trying to identify who needs intervention. Once we do that and we're providing intervention, we need to monitor that with progress monitoring assessments. That's happening in schools on a regular basis. And then finally, diagnostic. When we are really assessing a smaller sliver of the students to get at strengths and weaknesses, and what kinds of interventions need to be provided for a student. As I said before, one assessment can't serve a lot of purposes. We fall into this trap a lot because assessments take time and time is precious. So we want to do everything with those results and we really can't. Smarter Balanced is a way of getting a reliable and fairly efficient overall impression of a student's math or ELA achievement. And that's kind of where it stops. Those assessments are used for accountability purposes. They can, if we try to get down more granular, so try to go beyond overall, we can do a little bit of that at the group level, but you really can't do it at the student level with Smarter Balance. And that's not a bug, that's a feature. That's how it's designed. And so the kind of assessments that we need to make day-to-day decisions about what students need and how they're progressing, Smarter Balance isn't going to do that for us. It can do a lot, but it can't do that. We've been trying to get that word out. I think we're doing a better job. It's been about 10 years that Smarter Balance has been in place, so we've had some time to kind of get the messaging, hone our messaging a bit better. We talk about Smarter Balance being part of an assessment system, a sensible assessment system. And we rebranded our student assessment website a couple of years ago to get a visual representation of what I was talking about before. And that's what this visual is about. Notice up at the top you have the summative. That's where we put the Smarter Balanced assessment. And that's really for accountability purposes primarily, and it should be a small part of that triangle. And then we have interim assessments. Those are maybe we've got unit tests where the testing of whether or not students have achieved mastery of those skills is a little more immediate. We're not waiting till the end of the year. We're doing the unit. We're taking a dipstick. How'd we do? That's kind of what an interim might be. And then finally, formative. These are like formative assessment practices. These are the kind of day-to-day, minute-to-minute decisions that teachers are making based on the feedback that they're getting from students. Sometimes it's formal, many times it's informal, because teachers know their students really well. And it's through those formative assessment practices that they're getting that knowledge. It's not through Smarter Balanced. However, we know that Smarter Balanced results and all of our summative assessments, all the assessments that we're required to be administering, they send really important signals. And I think that's, I want people to take that home with them, that we often hear, maybe a student didn't do so well on an assessment, and it's easy to kind of dismiss it as, it was one day. And that is absolutely true. And it could be an off day for students. 100% that can happen. But if I have a child who gets a score that concerns me, I want the teacher to be able to provide me some evidence that it really was an off day, and that the rest of the story is that this child is doing very well. And if my child needs support, I want to know it. I mean, that's one of the things we'll talk about today. Like, we need to be honest about how students are achieving so that parents can take action because they want to take action. We know that. The study that I referenced in the very first bullet, I won't get into too many details, but I read it back in 2020 when it was first issued, and it has stuck with me. I come back to it over and over again. And it's one of the pieces of information I was chatting with Judy about, and it's kind of how I got sucked into today. Here I am. These researchers looked at longitudinal data, so rich data sets, many students, statewide data sets for 3 states. And they looked at state assessment scores starting in 3rd grade all the way to high school outcomes. And what they found was that 3rd grade performance was tightly connected to graduation, to success in rigorous courses. Those assessments send really strong signals. And I took a quote from the study and put it on the slide because they're not determinative. That is not what we're suggesting here, but they provide a really strong indication of the path the student is on. And so we should be mindful of what those scores look like and pay attention. And they also found when they looked at 8th grade scores in this study, interestingly, it didn't provide a lot of additional information. So what we really want to do in schools is break that trajectory, right? Like if the 3rd grade path doesn't look so great based on the results, we want to make sure we disrupt that so that when high school comes, students are ready for what's beyond high school. And in Connecticut, one of the other ways that we try to give some early signals is through something that we call the Early Indication Tool, or EIT. Many states have early warning systems for high schools where they're predicting if a student may not graduate. That's not what EIT is. What we built into EIT is these milestones, these important academic milestones for students along their K-12 trajectory. And the EIT is available in a secure portal because this is individual student level data now that we're talking about. So there are school level users and district level users who are authorized to see all those data. And so they can see more than just test scores about a student. You can see attendance rates over multiple years. You can see some indicators of mobility if students have multiple school moves. We know that that child might need more support. We have discipline data. There's a lot of information in the EIT, and we use all of the data we have on every student, and it's longitudinal, to assign a level of support to the student. So we say who, based on all the data we have on this child, who is a low support student, who's someone that needs medium support, and who needs high support. And we provide that as a tool to these authorized users in districts and schools, almost as a safety net, right? Because they know a lot about their students already. They have most of this data. Unless the student is brand new to you, you know what the student's history has been. But it was actually a superintendent who described it as a bit of a safety net. Like, we know who we think we have our eyes on most closely, but this tool helps us to confirm that and potentially identify some others that maybe weren't on our radar. So EIT is another way that we provide some early information to schools to best address the needs of students. I'm going to shift quickly and turn the microphone over briefly to Kristen Allen, my colleague, because she's going to talk about another really early, I don't say early warning, but some early indication that we get through K-3 literacy assessments, and she is much better to talk about that than me.
I'm not sure if that's true. But thank you. I'm Kristen Allen. I'm with the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities at the State Department of Education, and I have the ability to work closely with the Performance Office because I serve on the K-3 literacy assessment team. And as Renee mentioned, other than the SBAC, the other mandated assessment that districts are required to give are the universal screeners K through 3. And each district, there's an approved menu that the State Department of Education released, and each district in Connecticut is required to choose one of those universal screeners to identify students in K through 3 that are below reading proficiency and at risk for dyslexia or other reading disabilities. These universal screeners are considered general outcome measures, another terminology to add to the list of assessment terminology that Renee presented, but they're really highly predictable of reading difficulties. And so when we're thinking of that early intervention, these assessments are key. They allow for screening, but they also allow for progress monitoring. They measure foundational skills in K through 3, such as phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension and rapid naming, which again are very predictive of reading difficulties in K through 3. Those are among the 5 big areas that were considered important for instruction in those younger grades. They are brief, they are reliable, they're highly sensitive. They can track reading acquisition and skill development over time through that progress monitoring. And they can show that the students are on track towards long-term literacy goals, so even before SBAC. And they are formative assessments. They provide that actionable data, so when we think how can we guide instruction for students at the classroom level, these universal screeners and the progress monitoring data are important. And most importantly, they're evidence-based. We talk a lot at the state level about the science of reading and structured literacy, and these universal screeners are aligned with current reading science and best practices. And now I'll turn it back over to Renee.
That is much more thorough than I could have done for K3 literacy, and I probably learned something. Thank you. So what information are parents using to understand how their children are achieving in important content areas? There was a poll conducted by Gallup and Learning Heroes. I'm assuming this group is very familiar with Learning Heroes, but I'll just briefly say it is a nonprofit organization. It's a national organization that equips teachers and families with tools to help better communicate about student achievement with the end goal of improving student outcomes. That's like that is, we want to engage the families, we want to improve student outcomes. Those are 2 important things that they do. And their resources are awesome. They've been around, I think, for like 10 or 11 years. And I remember hearing about Learning Heroes years ago, and I'm not primarily in the family engagement space, but that just shows you how important family engagement is. It definitely infiltrated my algorithm, and I'm very impressed with what the Learning Heroes, what they do. So in 2023, they had a survey of 2,000 parents, and when they asked them, how do you understand your child's academic progress, most say, report cards. Report cards are what we use. And report cards are very familiar to all of us, right? We all had report cards growing up. So we think we know what an A is, what a B is, what a C is. Whether or not that's on target is another story, but we feel like we understand it, and it's a comfortable place. In this report that was a result of the poll, they talk about report cards being really the holy grail of measurement, and that what we don't think about, maybe, as report card creators or receivers, is that there's a lot of other information that's incorporated into a grade. So attendance, participation, effort, all important things that happen in classrooms every day, but the grade might be reflective of that more so than the extent to which a student is on grade level in a content area. So there's a little bit of a mismatch potentially there. And in this poll, 79%, so almost 80% of parents say that their children are getting B's or better. So we're good to go. A B is good. But those good grades don't necessarily mean grade level mastery. And there is evidence to suggest that this mismatch is real. So through the survey, the Learning Heroes found that the parents' perception is that 9 in 10 are saying they are at or above grade level in reading or math. So almost 90%, high 80s, low 90s. I mentioned in the beginning that I'm the state coordinator for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So I put some NAEP data on here. This is a nationally representative sample over the course of a bunch of years here. This is grade 4 reading, with 2024 being the most recent year. But you can even see, dating back into the 90s, what it looked like. This assessment's been around for a really long time. And NAEP has 4 achievement levels: below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced. Notice that I put the bar at NAEP basic. That was intentional. NAEP proficient is a pretty tough standard. I would not say, given my experience with NAEP, I would not say that NAEP proficient would equal minimal proficiency at grade level. I think it's a much more rigorous standard than that. So I shifted the bar down to NAEP basic, which is more like minimal proficiency. Even with that adjustment, and again, this is a national picture. Connecticut's slightly different, not wildly different, but slightly different. So you've got about 60% of students who are meeting that NAEP basic standard. So we have parents saying, oh, I think my child's on grade level. 88 to 89% are saying that they're on grade level. But when we look at a nationally representative sample with NAEP, we have a much different picture. It's more like maybe 60%. So who's getting swept up in that middle sliver there? It's more than a sliver. It's pretty big. So then look at the state results. So this is a visual representation of the percentage of students in Connecticut in grades 3 through 8. So I'm looking across all the grades on Smart or Balanced. In ELA and math by year, the percentage that are meeting that level 3 standard. And we define level 3 as meeting or exceeding expectations. And you can see here we have, about 50% in ELA and about 46% in math. So I don't have a survey of Connecticut parent perceptions, but I'm guessing that it's probably a lot more than 50% of families believing that their child's on grade level in these content areas. So what can we do about that? We know, and Judy alluded to this too, that academic results are a way to engage families. Like, we can do multiple things at once. And again, from the Gallup and Learning Heroes effort, when parents recognize that their children aren't performing at grade level, they have different concerns and they're likely to act. We need to be able to provide families with clear and actionable information, and there's a lot that Learning Heroes does to start to get at that. And maybe some of our conversations today are going to kind of address this in particular. And when we ask parents what matters to them when it comes to their school's engagement efforts, they prioritize, and Judy mentioned this in the beginning, in the opening, that the child's performance is key. And we want to hear the truth, even if it isn't positive. And those conversations can be difficult. I'd love to learn more about how teachers actually are able to have those kind of conversations effectively, but they're really key. If we want parents as active participants in this relationship, we need to give them true information and ways that they can act. So with that, I think we're ready to launch into some table conversations. Yes, question? Yeah, of course.
Because I'm thinking about which parents actually, do that survey.
Mhm.
Sometimes it can be only the parents who know that their child is doing well, and the parents who know that their child is not doing that well, they might not even participate in that survey. So I don't know how.
I do. I've read the report a while back. You have more information on that?
Yeah,
It is designed to be nationally representative.
that's it.
Okay.
So it is nationally representative, and so that means that demographic groups, income groups, rural, suburban, all of that is accounted for. And so we can assume that to the extent your school or town looks like America, then this is representative. Some states have done deeper dives just in their state. It comes out very similar. So we can trust this is across income levels that families don't know. And it's across types of schools and communities. It's just a missing piece across the board. And then to the degree families speak a language other than English, or to the degree families are disenfranchised in other ways, then of course there's more gaps and barriers. And the research also shows more opportunities for improvement. That those families, when they do have information, the active steps they take make a big difference.
But also, when you get these slides, I would encourage you to take a look at their report. It is very thorough, and the methodology is excellent.
We have Learning Heroes on it.
Oh, and Learning Heroes is, you can access them through the QR code that's on the, sorry, can I just grab this from you? From the agenda that's on your table, so I would encourage you to look there too, if you are dying to know more about Learning Heroes and don't have the slides yet. So, moving to table conversations. Each of the table conversation topics and leads are on this handout. So there are 7 different tables. We have gracious conversation catalysts for each group, which is very exciting. Are we asking them to pitch or no? Okay. Yes. Pressure's on. I've heard about this pitching for those of you who've been here before. Okay.
We call it a commercial.
Okay. And I don't even have my notes about what my commercial should be. I'm the first round table here. So people behind me on here, get ready, because you're going to have to pitch. I'll bring the microphone to you. You're all going to select a table. And your conversation catalyst, I'll go through what the format is first. Your conversation catalyst, so for me, I'm going to be up here at this table, and I'm going to kick off a small group discussion. We're going to have a discussion for about 30 minutes. And then, so the goal is we really want an exchange. Don't think of your conversation catalyst necessarily as the expert. I know at my table, I'm not going to be the expert. I'm going to present some ideas, and we're going to have a conversation, and I'm hopefully going to leave with a lot more information than I entered that door with. But at the end, I kind of lobbied Judy to extend to 11:30 today, because I wanted a really robust report out. You know, so the pressure's on. So we have 7 tables, and I want to go to all of them. And maybe you do too, or at least more than one, but you only have an opportunity to attend one. So I want everyone to take their responsibility very seriously to give us a really meaty report back. And I have some questions that I'm prompting you with on this slide. We want to know what surprised you about your discussion, what idea or resource from your conversation would be most valuable for the rest of us to consider, and think not just the rest of us in this room, but even like beyond, because we'd really like to get the word out about what's key and what is really helpful for people. And then what questions do you still have? In some cases, if you're at a table with CSDE people, you know, we need to be thinking about ways that we can do better. And so we want to know what are the burning questions out in the field so that we can better attempt to try to meet the needs of everybody as best we can. So that's kind of the format. And I'm going to be taking copious notes at the end so that I can report back to people at the agency about all the great ideas we're hearing today, because I trust it is going to be a great discussion. So, table 1, that's me. I really want to have a focus group. So, the State Department of Ed, when we first adopted Smarter Balance, put together these parent guides for every grade. And the thinking was that when score reports were shared with families, this parent guide could accompany it to talk about what is it that your child learned last year that's reflected on the assessment report, and what are they going to be learning in the prior year, and a bunch of different resources that can be used at home. And they've been updated recently, but I don't feel like they don't get a lot of play, they don't get a lot of usage. And I want to hear from you what your thoughts are about those guides. So we're going to take some time at my table to look at those guides, and we'll get some feedback and hopefully ultimately improve those eventually. So now other people are going to do a much better job than me of pitching their table. So table 2 is Kristen Wilder. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, I'm Kristen Wilder. I'm from Farmington Public Schools. Sorry, Dan. I'm Kristen Wilder. I'm from Farmington Public Schools, and so my table is talking about how can I help, strategies for parents understanding the standards. So we're going to be discussing how your district shares information with parents about, what is the reading standard for the end of the grade level? What do they need to know when they finish first grade or whatever grade it is? How do you communicate that to parents? And how you engage parents in the curriculum so that they're understanding what's happening during the school day besides just what their child is coming home and telling them. So I do have some resources I'm going to share for what Farmington has been doing, but I'm also looking for great ideas and conversations about how we can keep communicating with parents so that it's crystal clear what their children are learning during the day and what they can do to help them at home. Table 3.
Here we have Kristen Allen and Caroline Messenger.
So I came prepared this year, because last year I was not prepared to do a pitch, and so I have it written down. Because last year I felt so underprepared. So every child in Connecticut has the right to read. And with CSDE-approved universal screeners and evidence-based instruction, that right is becoming a reality. Our table, Every Child's Right to Read, Early Insights, Lasting Impact, is about turning insights into real family connections. We know that reading changes everything: confidence, opportunity, and the future itself. But the magic truly happens when families and schools work together. Join us to explore simple ways families can ask the right questions, stay informed, and support reading at home. Because when families are empowered, children thrive, and small early insights create a lifetime of impact.
All right.
Good morning, I'm Andy from Danbury Public Schools, our Office of Family School Community Partnerships, with my colleague Grace Molina, and we saw parents that sat just like this during conferences. No two-way dialogue. So we felt we really needed some mechanism to encourage families and empower them and educate them of how to speak, how to ask questions and things like that. So we developed a guide in multiple languages for parents to use, conversation starters, questions and things like that. And it was reported back that parents were arriving with their guide, with their questions written in it, and the teachers were brought to another level of really thinking about how they're going to respond and have this conversation, bi-directional conversation with the parents. And it wasn't, I'm going to tell you about your job, but let's develop some goals together.
I got a sneak peek of that, and it's good stuff. I have lots of questions for you right Okay, so the question was, not everyone can go to the Danbury table, but people are really interested in the materials, so we'll try to get you the link to that materials, and we'll talk a lot about it in the report out. Okay, table 5, Leah.
Hi, I'm Dr. Champernick. I am from the Turnaround Office at the State Department, but I am standing in for a principal of Ledyard High School, Amanda Fagan, who has graciously given me all of her data slides and ways that she presents information to parents in probably what is historically the least engaged area, which is high school. And so I'm actually a parent at that high school, and when I saw how information gets disseminated, I was like, I need to bring this to the table. So really, this is probably the best table to be at because it is high school, and we need to prepare them, and we have all the things that. That's right. Okay, that's right.
So table number 6 is our friends from Naugatuck, and I have to say that they had very little warning. Their superintendent, we chatted with her because we know Naugatuck is doing really great things for multilingual learners, and we thought that's a group that we'd really love to have represented in our table discussions. And Meg and Emily, thank you, have offered to pitch their table to you right now.
Okay, so at our table, we are trying to make LAST data accessible and meaningful for multilingual learners and their families. So the LAST links test is what the assessment we use to measure their language growth. So at Andrew Avenue Elementary, Naugatuck Public Schools, we believe growth deserves celebration. Join us to explore how schools and families can come together to understand student progress, celebrate language development, and empower every multilingual learner to thrive. Learn practical ways to make assessment data meaningful, encouraging, and joy-filled for families.
And the superintendent says that they are superstars, and I believe that. So I wish I could be at table 6, but I can't. Can't wait for the report out. So table number 7, empowering parents as active learning partners. Patrice Nelson. There we go.
So, I'm going to talk about it. All right, sounds good. So for about 18 years, I've been privileged to shepherd and coordinate a program for parents, a parent leadership and education program. So at this table, what you would be able to have the opportunity to do is to consider what have we learned about how parents have agency to lead and to partner on behalf of their own child and all children, and then to take an opportunity to have a conversation about that, to share what's worked in that arena for you as a parent, for you individually, or for in your community, but also what are the obstacles and how do we address those obstacles. Partnering is a really tricky thing, and so a big part of this will be talking about partnership.
Love that. All right, great.
Hi, my name is Jenny Ortiz. I'm the Assistant Director to Multilingual Learners, Adult Learners in Danbury. This table was amazing. Normally, and Meg, they gave us so much more than what they originally told us. So we learned how to help our educators kind of bridge the gap between LAS, last links, and cultural related, building teacher capacity, professional development, how to support better our students, but as well, our families, the cultural impact, integrating that into the classroom as well with the parents. She also shared, Nelly shared a very cool book. It's called Messiah, Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And it's a way to help our teachers teach out different strategies of how to scaffold, use different things like cognates, like visuals, cultural integration into the classroom for everyone.
Can you briefly share your experience as a parent?
As a parent, okay. In Danbury, my son was taking last links, and I didn't know. And as I think about this a lot because I had to advocate with the state. I do consider myself educated, and that's a privilege, right? I am Puerto Rican. But there are other people in my community that cannot, cultivate that conversation or advocate for their child. And that's something I encountered. He was taking this test, and he's like, Mama, I'm coming home, I have headaches, it's a long test. And when I later found out that he's been taking it for years, I had to call the state and advocate for my son. Then revert back, but it was because I checked off a box that said he spoke Spanish at home. He does, but he also reads chapter books in English. So it's a bit misleading language form at times that I found was troublesome. Nobody does a great job of communicating what the form is for the parents, but we don't have an anomaly in all the districts, right? And we don't have those liaisons or those reading coaches that will help our parents. There's cultural aspects that perhaps I'm intimidated by the language and the system, so I can't advocate as a parent and say, hey, this is an issue.
And what was the result?
The result was, I had to wait a year. I had to send the form back, retract it, send it to the state. The state said, well, it's gonna take a year. And I said, that's fine, it can take a year for your system to do whatever it needs to do. However, I don't want my son taking an additional test that he does not need. This resource is being used, that doesn't need to be used. It can go to someone that really needs it. So there's a lot there that can be discussed, but I think this is a great step, right? Having someone like Nobody, having a principal like Meg to kind of support our students and our teachers, integrate more into the classroom, it's a great step.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. Oh, I love when you're ready. So I love that example. We could definitely go on. And she said, when she told me that it took a year to get the form to travel the system, and she said, I didn't know what to do. I said, well, the state's in the room today.
All right, good morning. At our table, we had a great time sharing powerful stories. We were the Empower Parents as Active Learning Partners and challenges that can stand in the way. And thank you, Patrice Nelson, for doing exactly that. Do want to ask the question, what empowers parents as active learning partners at your schools? What empowers parents as active learning partners with schools? Really deep question. So the conversation that we had here at our table began with powerful stories from individuals from Crack, Waterbury, Middletown, and one of the questions that we were asked to listen to those stories and pick out what are some of the skills and practices that you are hearing as you listen to the stories about partnering with parents at your schools. Some of the things that were lifted were opportunities, willingness, understanding, openness, and the power of that one individual who is going to step forward and begin the partnership. And then the willingness of the individual receiving that to then partner. And is it okay if I share? So we had a individual at our table, she's from Waterbury, and she talked about a teacher approaching her with her son and how it began a beautiful partnership that has transcended and lasted over the last couple of years. And through that partnership, she became a parent liaison in Waterbury. And so we ended with thinking about the knowledge. What do parents need to know and understand as we are thinking about partnerships? And then of course, we recognize that there can be obstacles to an effective learning partnership, but being aware of what those obstacles are, and then how do we try to counteract those obstacles so we can continue to have great partnerships. So Parent C, Patrice Nelson, she shared with us a brief sheet with information that we can add to our toolbox. I don't know if we have extra copies because we took them all here at our table. You should have been here. But it was a great conversation, really thinking about how do we empower parents as active learning partners, not just partners, but active learning partners in our schools. So thank you, Patrice, for the great information.
Kudos. Am I coming with you?
Because I'm at the high school one, so in true high school fashion, they were like, I guess you're it. Because if we were at elementary, they'd be like, okay, I'll do it. Everybody at the table would have done that, right? You know, that's true. All right, so we did come up with a topic for one of the future events, which is supporting families of children with special needs, and how this data, well, you know, I shared a lot of data information, and none of it was representing special needs students. So a great topic to get into.
Overachievers over there.
We talked about, so we had representative from towns, we had representative from youth affairs is what we call it in New London. We have CREC, we have Open Choice, CTEX, so a lot of different, Gear Up. Okay, so we talked about ways to engage parents, coffee with the counselors, college tours that they do, and invite parents along. Town programs coming together, so that was the youth, how to get everybody in one website, one page, how are we all supporting the students of the town? Make Your Voice Matters, right, we talked about generational disconnect with public schools, distrust, and how to create that sense of belonging for the parents. A lot of what I shared in the PowerPoint was that link that the principal does on how your student needs to feel like they belong. So there's attendance, that's the top thing, right? Because you can't feel like you belong if you don't show up. And then how do you get involved in other things besides just going to class? What other options are there? Like let parents know. And then lastly comes that piece. Then the academics come because they're showing up. They're there to get that information. Trying to go fast. When sharing about data, it should be easy to consume. All right. So we talked about graphics. That was what I showed. Easy graphics to look at. PowerPoints, like just quick information so that parents can understand there is a number associated with their SAT or their PSAT, and so there's a goal, and not so number heavy or even word heavy with the graphics. Relevant for all student groups, breaking stigmas around other districts.
To make information, I was linking fast. Making data more relatable, like how do we make what we do at school relatable for our parents? And just connect it.
They're like, great job. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm coming here. Who's your spokesperson?
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We had a wonderful conversation here over at table 3. One of the things that surprised us the most is the importance of oral language. In our 26-letter alphabet, I learned today that creates 44 different sounds, and sometimes that can be difficult for children to understand. So phonetically, to associate sounds into letters is going to be one of the most important indicators of how children are going to read. As I continue, I just wanted to quickly acknowledge, although this meeting is smaller, I've seen more men in this meeting every session. So I just want to congratulate all the fellows who are doing this important work. So I appreciate you guys all for coming. Secondly, the idea or resource that would be most valuable to you all, what we found to be most valuable is the Right to Read checklist. This is available in English and Spanish. This is a quick guide that can enable parents to be more active participants in their discussions with their teachers. Simply asking things like, how often are my child's reading skills assessed? How is progress communicated? And what support is available for children who are not on reading grade level, right? And questions that remain for us, of course, is how can we improve, right? How can we effectively help our children in the district? How can we help them as parents? Some parents become frustrated because although they may read to their children are simply memorizing, and they're not really learning the skills of how to read on their own. And another important question that came up is, how does the medium affect the outcome? So like digital media versus physical media, how does that affect the outcome of how they are learning? So that was just some food for thought at the end that we didn't really get to, but just something to consider as we're testing, as the testing nowadays is typically in laptop or tablet form. Having those multiple choice questions, kids can kind of just be guessing, and it doesn't really give an accurate indication of their learning. So thank you all for joining us today.
It was not a plant. I did not plant today. but I will invite you to be a part of our planning committee. Share your name with my team. Okay.
So we were talking about how to help families better understand the standards around grade level learning. And I think one of the things that maybe came to the top, but probably not a surprise to anybody, was that it's very teacher and school dependent, and it can vary wildly between your school level, your teacher within a building. And so part of that, we were talking about having clear expectations and consistency in messaging, so that if your middle school and your high school and your elementary schools are messaging their results for standardized assessments and things like that in the same way, so it's very clear and easy for families, and that bringing families into the, I think helping define the why, so like what is it families are learning, why are they learning it, or sorry, what are students learning, why are they learning it, and what is it that families need to know, so kind of like what are the quick hits that by the end of first grade, third grade, you should be doing this, this, and this. And so at Farmington, they shared a really nice simplified website that had all the different academic modules broken out and like the standards that kids should be meeting, and then links to a bunch of resources. And then they did share a really cool learning kit that goes home with families, with kids on a weekly basis that rotates throughout the classroom, that is really in depth to make the lessons tangible and to bring families into that process. They showed a birding one, it had like binoculars and a book and puzzles and a little stuffed animal and made bird sounds, and then kids write about what they did with this when they brought it home, and so they can see that collection throughout the lesson. And I think too, I'm a data person, and so just this discussion of visualizing and communicating data simply, I would definitely stress that, and like spectrums and continuums is what we were talking about, of like you're here, you need to get here, to make it less overwhelming for families.
Did you still have any questions?
Do we still have questions?
I know she's short.
Anyone still have questions, or just things that they want to take home and do, or? Yeah.
I did have a question. Maybe one of the questions that I had as a parent, that I had as a parent was, why are the Smarter Balance results shared with parents like at the beginning of a tour in our district? And the reason I was asking that was because in the summer, they're off 2 months, and I would love to have this before they leave on the summer break, so I could be able, as a parent, to be able to provide those resources. So, I said to them, there's a statement, it takes a village, the teacher cannot do this by themselves, right? So teachers don't work in the summer, but we parents, our parents, and we have those kids at home. So if I knew his results of the Smarter Balance before he left in the summer, coming back, those results might have changed.
And along those lines, I just want to ask, how many districts have an issue with the way communication is brought home to parents and lack of transparency, as well as community organizations that share students?
Thank you, sir. Okay, I counted down, Mary.
Okay, so Grace and I presented on our booklet of how to have a successful conference, and I have to say that I think we gained as much information out of the conversation that we had, as well as the people who were in the conversation gained. So our takeaways were, one of the big questions we get from parents, and Grace brought this to life, is that my child has an IEP, I have all of these PPT meetings, why do I need to do a conference? So we need to think about that and define that one a little bit better. One of the gentlemen in the group over here said, let's flip these conferences. Why do we jump right into scores and how your child's doing when the relationship hasn't even been built yet? So it's like a no-brainer, but it just really hit home today. So we're gonna, as I said to him, if my school readiness director calls him and says, what crazy idea did you have? You know that I brought it home with me, right? We all felt that the guide really built the efficacy and empowered parents, okay, to really, be that partner in that conference and just not be sitting there listening. And it gave the families the how of how to have that successful conference. So I think we still have a lot more questions and a lot more to talk about around conferences and how to make them highly successful. Thank you for your work that you do with scores and stuff, and how do we make understanding the purposes of the test. We list the tests in the book that the children take, but how do we encourage parents to come and really understand what that test is and how they can operationalize and support the student learning at home. So that's one of our big takeaways.
Thank you. I think we talked about that earlier, understanding the why. Okay, so we're going to land this plane. Do you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just going to mention her.
Well, wait till you bring the mic.
Oh, no, I don't want it.
It's not for you.
Oh, she was here. I was just going to mention some of our schools in the past few years have started student-led conferences, and it has been a game changer in some of the schools with the work that goes into it ahead of time for the students to understand, and create goals and explain it to their parents and what they're going to achieve. So that was something new that's been really positive in some of our schools as well.
I can second that. My granddaughter is in first grade now, and she did it last year in kindergarten. So we're going to land this plane where we started, right? You're it. So thank you for being here, and now you have the microphone, and you can keep it.
Okay. So even though I developed the questions for the report out, I didn't really follow my own direction. And our session, we kind of were all over the place, but in a good way. And I see so many common threads to other things that I'm hearing here today. So thank you for the robust report out. I can't wait to get the transcript, look at some of these resources. Some of the things that we talked about, you talk about make it clear for students or clear what the purpose is of these assessments, the why. And one of the issues that was raised at our table was that parents, families don't necessarily know what the stakes are connected to the results. And the truth is, we're not retaining students in a grade because of their Smarter Balance scores. The stakes at the individual student level are low. The information is strong. It's good. It's important. And like I said in the opening remarks, we send strong signals, but we need to sort of level set about what the impact of those scores actually are. That could maybe help the conversation a bit. There was also a conversation, this was interesting to me, I never really thought of this, is that when teachers are asked to have frank, direct conversations with families about student achievement, there is some fear in some places, because when we say that your student needs support in a particular area, the district may not be equipped and have the resources to provide that support. That's just a reality. And so how do we get past that challenge? Because that's a tough one. So it's something for me to think about. The communication with families, and we talked about Parent Square, the fact that we've got sort of a new generation of communicators, both in the family side and on the teacher side. And maybe we can do more to support those productive conversations, which it really sounds like what Danbury's doing. So I appreciate that. A couple of other interesting things I learned, and then I'll wrap up. So Bristol does these guardian sessions where you are...
Well, we've only done one.
Okay, well, you have big plans.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Just started.
Where you're kind of prepping the families, and it sounds like this probably is similar to what Danbury's doing. And then my friend from Wethersfield really suggested that our office, the performance office, we often rely on our data people at the district level, and they are such a rich resource. They give us such great feedback. But for some of the materials that we're creating, we really need to turn to the family engagement specialist to get feedback. So I hope to do more of that moving forward and to really promote that kind of regular practice with my coworkers. And then also connecting, even though OEC, Office of Early Childhood, is a different office, I was informed that, because I know very little about OEC other than I have a very, very good friend who works there. So I feel like these are going to be good conversations I'm going to have with her, that there is a local governance partnership infrastructure that we could potentially tap into. They have a parent cabinet, and that there are parent ambassadors. And so this was all new to me, so thank you for helping me learn that today. And hopefully we can tap those people as a resource moving forward to just make all of our communication and our efforts more coordinated and clear and productive. So, thank you.
Okay, so thank you all for your participation today. It doesn't even look like y'all want to leave. So just heads up, our next Friday Cafe is November 14th. And apparently, my team and I are on deck. So come on back and hear about welcoming walkers. Thank you. Now go be great on purpose.
Yes.